Okay. Hi, Paola Jo from SederQuilts. Oh my goodness, today is a busy day. We are going to do some work here. And I wanted to show you a few tricks. Oh my goodness, we have so much fabric to cut. Today we're going to be talking about fat quarters because I do think that's probably the best way to be efficient about this. And the most fun for a holiday with your friends. I like that word. Anyway, I think it's going to be easiest if you do a light to dark and light and a dark combination so you can see what you're doing, easily see. You've got 4 strands of all 4 colors. I was doing them in gradations of colors so that I had all the green ones together or all the blue ones together when I was cutting the cherry wood. Oh, because it's going to be easier to organize what I want in the packs, but it's harder for my poor little over 50 eyeballs to see, do I have all 4? And then, you know, I was wasting time and cutting too close and whatnot. So anyway, it's easier if you have some variation in your layers so you can see what you're doing. Layers. I like to do a lot of things in layers, and because I can be kind of random and abstract and distracted. So if I can be a little bit more concrete and sequential and organized, I'm more efficient. Now, some of you are already way too much that way, so you have to just lighten up and be just a little more abstract once in a while. But anyway, we're trying to find that happy medium. But when it comes to rotary cutters, a sharp knife is much more efficient and safer than a dull knife. Same thing for rotary cutters. If your blade is nicked or it doesn't cut real well the whole way, it's slow and then you have to go back and fix things, a sharp blade is so much better. It's just like a hot knife through butter. Yeah, so you want a sharp blade, and especially if you're going to be cutting more than 1 layer or 2 layers of fabric at a time. Oh my goodness, a sharp new blade is wonderful. I have a great little tool that I can sharpen the blades. I used to be a dental hygienist, so I'm a professional at sharpening instruments. So I oftentimes will sharpen and sharpen and sharpen my blades and get a lot of use out of them. And that's a nice option if you like putzing with that type of thing, and yeah. But otherwise, oh my goodness, buy a pack of new blades and mark it new. And then with your old package, mark it used. If you have a blade that is not sharp enough, put a new blade in there because, oh my goodness, it's just going to make a world of difference. I don't know if this one is sharp enough or not, but I just changed this a couple of days ago, and oh, yeah, a sharp blade is a good thing. I'm easily amused and turned into a happy camper some days. Alrighty, so I have 4 fat quarters already lined up, a cream and a navy and a cream and a navy, and we're going to go iron these. First of all, you really do, well, you could do it without ironing them, but I'm a little bit OCD about details and I want them ironed. All right, you might be tempted to just iron the whole stack all at once, and maybe that's okay, but if there's a crease and a crinkle and a wrinkle and you cut them with that in there when you get ready to use it and it has a wrinkle in it, it's now going to be not the right size. So it's probably best to go ahead and actually make sure that each layer is ironed nicely. And you could do each one totally independently, or you could do them kind of all at once and keep moving them. But oh yeah, see, this one has a wrinkle in it. See that wrinkle? And if you cut it with that wrinkle in there, I don't know if you can see that very easily, but that would really mess up the size of that square. And actually it would probably interfere with a bunch of squares. So yeah. So do it right from the beginning. Prep work is important. We are going to be saving lots of time, so it's worthwhile taking time for the important prep things, detail things. Oh yeah, see, that's just so much nicer when it doesn't have all those wrinkles and crinkles in it. You might want to be using some kind of starch or Marianne, the Best Press. I can't remember her name. I'm terrible about names. But the Best Press stuff is really nice. I have trouble with most smells and chemicals though. So I used to be able to use the cherry blossom one. Oh, it was so yummy, but yeah. I get headaches and wheeziness from most all smells and chemicals now. So I just use water, and that works too. Some of those other things work even better, but water works well. I have found that even though I love a good steam iron, when you put water in your iron and you use it as much as we use our irons, eventually they get kind of yucky and the water drips out and spurts out icky colors. And so I have found that even though I love a good steam iron, it's better for me to just use a dry iron and use a squirt bottle of water. And that way I don't have any little problems with rusty spots or spurts or hiccups coming out of the iron. And then I don't ruin fabric. As a professional, it's very important for me not to ruin fabric. We just want to make sure we get things flat and smooth. We don't want to be stretching. We don't want to be creating wonky fabric. We just want to get rid of the creases and wrinkles. But eventually it feels pretty smooth. Give it another good spurt of water. A little mist. But I do usually try to press it. I try to press it a little bit first without any moisture, without any steam, without any water. Because when it's wet, it's more stretchable. Encourage it to go where you want it to go, where you know it should go. And if you can't get it to look right, get it wet and wring it out and fluff it in the dryer a little bit and then press it. There are tricks. So, I'm going to try to be as efficient as possible with things, so I want to start with a selvage edge. If it's a cut edge, there are lots of little threads, and it may or may not be cut as square and perpendicular and parallel to the selvage. So I'm going to go through and I'm going to find the selvage edges and I'm going to line them up. Oh, this one's obviously not a selvage because there's threads everywhere, so let's flip that over. Okay, with fat quarters, you're going to have one selvage edge somewhere. And hopefully they're all the skinny way. And now we're going to just line these up and try to line them up as efficiently as possible so we don't waste too much fabric. And once I get the tops all lined up pretty good, we're gonna fluff them. And all right, so some are winging out that way and some are winging that way. So again, I'm gonna flip a couple of these around and see if they, oh yeah, that lines up much better. Let's see if I flip these. Oh yeah, they line up better. Let's see if these all, oh, there we go. Okay. If we have things winging out in both directions, we're going to be wasting fabric when we try to square up some nice lines. So this is putsy, and it's not necessary. You don't have to do it this way, but if you're, some of us quilters really hate to waste any little bit of fabric. And so the better we can be about being efficient and effective and frugal, it's a fun game, you know. Anyway, there. Now I'm not going to waste much, and I can do 4 of them at a time. Yeah, this is a good way. Okay, here we go. When I'm cutting, no matter what quilt you're doing, whatever project you're doing, most of the time we don't want to use salvaged edges. For one thing, sometimes the fabric doesn't look as nice all the way out. And so if I'm trying to use as much of that selvage edge as I possibly can in my seam allowance, sometimes you're going to see a little dab of that streaky line, and people are going to know you were right close to that, and it doesn't look as nice. Plus, they oftentimes have lots of little holes. Can you see those little holes punched in the edge? There's little teeny holes along the selvage. But anyway, so one side of the selvage. Looks gorgeous. You could get by. If you desperately need every last little eighth of an inch of fabric, yeah, I sometimes include a selvage edge on my own projects. But you at least want to cut off that last thread where when they're weaving the fabric and they're wrapping that thread around where it's wrapped, that little bend, you want to cut that. Or at least snip the end every once in a while, just to relax that thread. Because when you wash fabric, the selvage is woven tighter. And you've got those turned edges of the thread. It's tighter there. And so when you wash it, it shrinks up more on the selvage edges. Or it is so tightly woven and it is so flat and dense that when you wash it, that does not shrink much, but the rest of it shrinks up. But anyway, one way or the other, they shrink differently. That selvage edge, after a while, scrunches up. And so if you've used fabric that still contains that entire selvage edge, it doesn't wash up and stay as nice and pretty and happy. Does it really matter? Nah, it's fine. I've got plenty of quilts that mean so much, and there's so much love and so much sentiment in there, and oh, there's all kinds of oopsies and mistakes and whatnots, but there's so much love in them that I don't care that there's some oopsies and selvage edges and holes and oops, accidental corners. It's just fine, you know. So for my own use, for your own use, oh, it might be just fine. But because I'm making up kits for you, and some of you belong to the quilt police, and some of you are even more OCD about more things than I am, I want it to be just as perfect as possible for you. I want to put in lots of TLC from my end of the deal here, and you're going to love what you get from SederQuilts and from me, Paola Jo. So selvages should be cut off because of the shrink factor, and because sometimes it doesn't look as nice. But oh my, on cherry wood and on most batiks, it's gorgeous right out to the very edge. Even if that is the selvage and the weaving and the whatnots, it looks gorgeous right out to the edge. So if you have to use every last little bit, you can get by. But if you can really see it, most projects you don't want to see that printed selvage edge. But sometimes that's really a cool little artistic little thing, and there are a lot of quilts nowadays that are being kind of artsy fartsy, and they include those, and it's kind of cool. So, you know, it all works. Whatever you like best. Because I know that the selvage edge is pretty straight and square and perpendicular and parallel to the threads running through it, that is my line that I'm going to go from. We don't want to use the selvage. We actually want to trim that off just a wee bit, about 1/4 inch. And, alrighty, for you beginners, generally speaking, a fat quarter is going to be 1/2 yard. So 36 divided by 2 is 18. We're going to have 18 inches one way. And it's half the width of the fabric, so it's usually 40 to 44, 42, 45, somewhere in there. So 1/2 of 40 is 20. It's usually about 18 by 21, give or take a little. So if we are making 5-inch squares, 5 by 5, we should be able to get about 4 across, because 4 times 5 is 20, and it should be about 21, maybe 22, maybe 23, but somewhere in there. You're going to have a little bit extra over here. So we have a little bit of room to trim off and still have 4 rows, 4 columns. Okay. The other direction, the 18 inches about, we're going to be able to square up our line, and we should be able to get 3, 5, 10, 15, and hopefully we're also going to get a 2.5 over here. 5, 10, 15 plus 2.5 is 17.5. So this should be 18 by 21. So we've got a little bit of room to square up, but sometimes they're not quite really square. You know, in a perfect world, oh, it should be 18 by 21. But in the real world, some of those fat quarters are going to be a little wonky in one corner. So you want to look at it and see where can I be the most efficient with my first cut, and then go from there. So this is a good way to figure it out. Above and beyond that, what we need to look at, another way we can look at it, are these really cool cutting grids and things. You can sometimes really figure out what you're going to be doing if you're using some sort of a big square ruler, but these are not quite big enough to cut efficiently. So I'm actually going to be using one of my big long rulers. It's my absolute favorite. It's not quite as square and even as nice as it used to be, because it's my favorite and I cannot find a replacement for it. So I oftentimes cut with two rulers at a time. And I actually have some free videos on YouTube about cutting stacks of fabric with 2 rulers. I think I have 2 videos about cutting fabric with 2 rulers. Go look them up. We'll have a link in the description here. So oftentimes I will use one ruler to find the measurement that I'm looking for, and then the other one for cutting purposes. So, all right, we're going to get started here. I know I have more than my 20 inches that I need, so I can cut off a little bit. Now, sometimes I'm so tempted to cut off just the skinniest little bit, but you want to cut off at least a 1/4 inch to get rid of the selvage, and you want to make sure that you're cutting through all the layers. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut my first 5-inch swatch here. I want to cut my first 5-inch swatch with a little bit extra over here. And I want to be able to see all 4 colors. So I want to see a white and a blue and a white and a blue. Okay. I'm going to make my first cut on this side and try to stay as perpendicular and parallel as possible with all of that. And now we have a perfect line here to do the rest of them. This one, I'm going to try to keep it all in a nice perfect stack, and I'm going to flip it around. I'm going to cut the other edge right away. So I've got a 5-inch strip, and we're going to throw away this little bit, and we want to make sure that we can see all 4 colors, 1, 2, 3, 4, all the way. We didn't have, oh, we had a few little skinny ones. Boy, I just barely got that one. But yes, okay, because I had 4 full strips trimmed off, we know that those are perfect edges on both sides there. Okay, now we're going to cut the rest of these. My favorite cutting ruler is 5 inches wide. So it's wonderful. I like 2.5-inch squares for a lot of things, and I like 2.5-inch strips for my bias binding. So I oftentimes will cut things in 5-inch and then cut them in half for the 2.5. It's a little easier to get off line if I'm cutting skinny little things, but if you cut a wider swatch, it's a little easier to see that it's square. So I like to cut 5 inches at a time and then subdivide that. Okay. Once I get that first one going, I can now line up my ruler, my bigger ruler, at 5 and 10 and 15. Make sure you're on the solid 1 inch, not the 1/2 inch to start with. I've got a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. These are even numbers here, and there are 1/2 inches over here. So we know that we're at 5 and 10 and 15 and whatnot here. So we can use the first ruler to get our 5-inch space. And I can cut through a second one. And by having them in groups where I haven't moved them and whatnot, now we could use one of these type of tools. I'm going to show you lots of options. You pick and choose the options you like best. You don't have to use all the options all together, but I'm going to show you a bunch of things. and then you can pick and choose which ones you like. So we're going to cut off this end and make it straight. And we want to make sure that we see all 4 layers, but I'm going to cut it as skinny close as I possibly can. And I'm going to line everything up nicely. Okay, I'm going to turn around this way so I'm right-handed. Okay, I'm going to trim that first end, and I'm going to see, do I have all 4 layers? 1, 2, 3, 4, and are they all full strips? Okay, so that edge is good. 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, and those are all full. Okay, so with just a teeny little cut, I can see that I've gone through all layers, so they're all good. If you don't check first, and one of them was tucked in a little further, and the top one looks good, but your bottom ones weren't all the way out to the edge, you've wasted them. So, okay, those are good there. Now I can cut the rest of these. There are lots of these cool grids with cutting lines in them. This one happens to be a June Taylor. There are a lot of different brands of these available. Some of them are slipperier than others. This one's a little slippery. So I have to be careful to make sure I hold it really well, get my rotary cutter lined up. You want to go through it once and back the other way, and you want to listen. You want to make sure that you've cut through all the layers of the fabric nicely. And again, I want to cut all the way through and all the way back. If your blade is a little dull, you can hear the difference when you cut through there. Now I know that I can get 1, 2, 3, I'm going to get a 5, a 10, a 15, and then that 17.5. So I'm going to take these out of here, and look at, they're so perfect. I just love it. Okay, now I'm going to line this up again, and again I'm going to cut a 5 and a 10, and then I'm going to cut my 2.5 out there. Okay, so there's my 5, and I'm going to cut the 2.5. Okay, now we know that these 5s are good. Now we have to check these 2.5ers, because sometimes one of those bottom ones didn't extend all the way through, but that's all good there. This is all good there. Okay, those are wonderful. They're going to go in my 2.5-inch stack, 2.5 by 5s. All right, those are going there. This is a strip. And then this is my wasted fabric. Now, if it's more than 1/2 inch, we could use these little scraps in other things. And these all look pretty good. Some of these might be a little too skinny, but you know what? Yeah, we might use those. So I save all of these for my friend who, instead of playing video games at night or instead of reading a book or whatnot, she will listen to a book on tape, or she'll watch a movie, or she'll at least be in the same room while her husband is watching a sports game of some sort. But she loves to sew all these little bits and parts and pieces, and she makes me the most wonderful Brenda blocks. So I give her scraps. She enjoys the piecing of all those little things without having to worry about any kind of a pattern, and she ends up with all these wonderful scrappy blocks. And then I get some of them back every once in a while, and she donates them to a lot of the churches and different organizations, and it's just a wonderful way to not waste that little bit of fabric. But I don't have time to do that, so I bag them up and I give them to her, and she has fun with them, and then every once in a while she gives me back some squares, some blocks, some Brenda blocks. So thank you, Brenda. I love you, love you, love you. Okay, so now we've got a lot of squares there that were very efficiently cut. And then we have a strip here, and we have one more strip to cut here. And I've been very careful to keep my stack intact. I'm trying not to move them any more than absolutely necessary, because every time you pick up a piece of fabric and you move it, especially if it's only one piece of fabric, it's going to get wonky in there. So you want to try to keep them as a unit as much as possible. I'm going to try to cut these into a 2-inch strip if possible. There's not enough to make a 2.5. Ooh, that one was close though. But they're not going to be 2.5-inch strips, but I could make a 2-inch strip out of some of these. Let's see, 1, 2, not very many of them are going to be 2-inch, but some of them are. So I'm going to cut a 2-inch strip. I'm going to throw away this little bit of wasted, and then I'm going to see, this one is less than 2, so I'm going to give that to Brenda. This one is less than 2 in most of it. Ooh, I could get a couple up here though. And I can see the blue, and I know I was cutting through it. I'm going to cut a couple of 2-inch strips here. This one's going to Brenda. And this one is going to go with my other stack over here. Hang on. Actually, let's line that up. And let's line that up. So that's going to be ready. I can cut those two together in one fell swoop. Okay, back over here. I'm going to use this board. This is from Creative Grids. Oh my goodness, I love their rulers. They have these little dots of just a teensy little bit of grip. You used to be able to get, and you still can get, some little adhesive sticky pieces of double stick tape basically, and they're kind of sandpapery kind of a thing. But because I have trouble with adhesives and glues and tapes and things, yeah, I can't use those. So those ones that are kind of slippery, most of you should put some little dab of a grip stick thing on the back side of them so they don't slide around so much. But these Creative Grids just have a rough texture on them. It's not an adhesive, so it doesn't bother me, and it's just rough enough that it holds nicely and it doesn't slip. Oh, they're fantastic. You're going to love it. You can move it around on your fabric, but once you have it where you want it, if you put just a little bit of pressure, it stays in place nicely. So I want to make sure I've got all 4 layers. That one's kind of short. Where's my other 4th one? Oh, I already took the 4th one off. I just have 3 layers. So I can go all the way up to there and waste the least little amount. I want to make sure I line this up on the straight lines the best I possibly can. Okay, I'm going to cut a 2.5 there. Oh, and I really should have come all the way down here. Okay, so I'm going to come down as far as I can where I can see that I've got all my layers nicely. Okay, I can go all the way to there. All right, I'm going to cut this. I don't care how many inches that is other than I know that it's more than 2. I'm going to get this out of the way, and most of these are not going to be quite big enough for me, so they're going to Brenda. Of what's left, I am going to cut 2 inches at a time here, and this is a 1/2 inch. I want to make sure I'm on the 1 inch. One of the nice things about these Creative Grids, they have full inch or 1/2 inch measurements on here, so you want to make sure you're on the full or the half depending on what you're trying to cut. But there's a 2-inch square, gorgeous. I'm going to cut that one. So that was 2, so now I want to go up to 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. There we go. So now I've got 2. Oh, and that one's going to be too small. That's not square. I can eyeball that pretty well, but you could double check it. Yeah, no, it's not. So these go in my 2-inch square pile right there. And then this little dab, you know, I could take out my little square rule and I could, the biggest I could make this would be 1 3/4. That's way too small for me. So that goes in my Brenda pile. So I'm going to get my little Ziploc baggie and I'm going to put those all in there and try not to squish them too much. So, all right, there you go. And now we go back to the other over here. And again, let's see, my edges. Now see, this first one is much wider than my white underneath there. And this next one is even a little further in, so this is a little closer here, so I'm going to bring this in a little bit and try to line it up with my shortest one from underneath. All right, about in there, so I need to All right, I need to cut off that edge nice and flush and square. And where's my 2.5? Here we go. Now, I want to line that first one up a little bit inside of here and still get as much as I possibly can here. Ooh, I might get a whole nother 5 out there. Alrighty, so I'm going to line up on as many straight lines as possible. The line that's most important is the line that's going to go in between the two stacks here. And then kind of check that everything else is pretty square, and I'm going to come in just a wee bit more. I think that's going to be good. I'm going to hold this really well, and I'm going to cut this one. All right, now I'm going to check to make sure that I went through all 4 layers. So I'm going to pull this away and see if I can see all 4 colors. Yep, those are all nice, good. Now this one, let's see. Do we have all 4? Yep, and they're all full strips. Okay, so everything's good here. Now I can line that up with that first edge. Line up my lines. And this is putsy, but once you get it lined up, you're cutting 8 squares all at once. Go all the way through and back. Carefully hold things in place. Don't let anything slide and wiggle. All right. Carefully take those out, and I try to hold down the others before I lift the loose ones. Now, in case it didn't go all the way through, you want to be holding these in place. As you pull these away, if there was one thread that didn't get cut, it's going to mess up your stack over here. So, as long as I know that could possibly be an option, I can be careful and prevent as much of that as possible. All right, I've got just a little bit of wonkiness out here on the end, so hang on a second. All right. And again, I don't have to be quite this careful, but those of you who are a little more abstract and a little more forgiving about all this, yeah, you're fine. But for those of you who are pretty concrete and OCD and pretty linear and whatnot, yeah, you can appreciate all of this. Okay, now I've got a 5. Now I can do a 2.5. And I may or may not have enough left over here to do something else with. But again, this should be good, this should be good, this should be good, that should be good, yep. And we're gonna stack those all up and put them in the pile. Stack these up and put them in the pile. Okay, that goes in the big pile. Okay, and then that's too small even for Brenda to use, so those are gonna get thrown away. I don't know. She might use those. She can throw them away if she can't. But they might be good enough. Okay, and then those are small enough. Okay. Alrighty. That was not very much wasted fabric from 4. And now we're going to do another stack. And I'm going to try not to talk. And I'm going to try to be efficient. You can see how quick and easy it is. Okay. Okay, so I wouldn't have to be that putsy and that careful and that OCD if I was just doing them for myself, and then as I was using them, oh, if I found one that was short, no big deal. But I'm making up these kits for you. I want you to make sure you don't have any missed corners. I don't want to give you any blocks that are not perfect 5-inch blocks or 2.5-inch blocks. And I want to be as efficient as possible. So I'm being putsy and careful so I'm not wasting, I'm not making oopsies, although they do happen once in a while. But as long as I'm cutting my big squares first and getting as many big ones first, then any of the little extras and scraps I can keep cutting them down to the next size, to the next size, to the next size, and then get rid of them or give them away. But because I'm doing 4 fat quarters at a time, I'm doing a yard at a time, and they're all getting very efficiently cut up, it's good use of time. So anyway, that was a quick lesson. Hope that was helpful. A lot of different options. Figure out what works best for you and what you have. Thank you for following our series of free videos on the Cross of Many Squares on SederQuilts YouTube channel and Facebook and SederQuilts.com, and you can contact me at SederQuilts@gmail.com, and you know, you can comment on any of those social media things, and like and subscribe and follow, and yeah, you know all that stuff. Thanks a lot. See you later. Toodaloo.